Please take out your Bibles and open to Luke chapter 15. Luke chapter 15 will serve as our text for both this morning and this evening. I am convinced, and I think you will agree, not even at maybe the beginning, but certainly by the end, that there are few parables that Jesus would speak that are as comprehensive, that are as complete as is the parable of the prodigal son in terms of our relationship to God, what it is that He is looking from us, and how it is that whole dynamic exists. Let's read Luke chapter 15. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to him. And the Pharisees and the scribes grumbled, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. "What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one that is lost till he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. When he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I found my sheep that was lost.' Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Or what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one coin, does not light a lamp and sweep the house and seek diligently until she finds it? And when she has found it, she calls together her friends and her neighbors, saying, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that was lost.' Just so, I tell you, there is joy before the angels of God over one sinner who repents." And he said, "There was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me.' And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he arose and came to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' The father said to his servants, 'Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field, and he came near to the house and heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. He said to him, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound.' But he was angry, and he refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him. But he answered his father, 'Look, these many years I have served you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a young goat, that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' And he said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead, and he is alive. He was lost, and he is found.'" It's interesting, in the middle of chapter 14 of this book, we see that there are great crowds that are now following Jesus. They are interested in what he can do. They are interested in what he has to say, and they are divided into two groups. We discover in the first part of this chapter 15 who is listening and who had their fingers in their ears. Jesus has just previously said to them, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear." That includes everyone. And there are some who would, and there are some who would not. There are the tax collectors and the sinners. There are the scribes and the Pharisees. And it's important that we understand this dynamic between these groups as they follow and listen to Jesus, because it sets up everything that he says in chapter 15. It's important that you understand this great division that existed between the scribes and the Pharisees and really everyone else. There was this line between the two that was not crossed. There was a Pharisaic saying that called these people the people of the land. And they would say this. It says, when a man is one of the people of the land, entrust no money to him. Take no testimony from him. Trust him with no secret. Do not appoint him guardian of an orphan. Do not make him custodian of charitable funds. Do not accompany him on a journey. In other words, you really have no contact with these people that are of the land. People that are not like you and me. Well, I don't have to get far into this lesson before there is application for me. There's application for you, and that there is some responsibility that we have as Christians, as people of God, towards people who are not necessarily living their lives maybe as you and I are, and who would come into this assembly and desire to see what we're about. There is an attitude that you and I, if we are not careful, can emit that is detrimental to what it is that Jesus is trying to get us to be like. I don't think that far-fetched. That because someone doesn't look like us, that because someone isn't dressed like you and me, that because obviously they have got more problems than you and I, that they should be treated any differently than those of us who know each other. There was a Jewish proverb that actually said, "There is joy before God when those who provoke him perish from the world." Can you imagine that? They're having their Saturday service at the building, and they're asking everyone to come, and their mantra is plastered, across the bulletin board in the back. Look, there's joy before God when those who provoke him perish from the world. So come on in, and bring your family, and let's worship. There was a tremendous line between the Pharisees, the scribes, and everyone else. The people on the outside were sick of this. They were sick to death of what it is that the Pharisees and the scribes were representing. Imagine now how that group, the publicans, the sinners, felt when they heard Jesus speak. How refreshing would that have been to hear the things that he was saying? How embracing would Jesus have been to those people as he now speaks on a level that they get and that they can understand and that they can relate to? He's masterful in his approach. And he grips their attention. He appeals to their sense of reason. And he moves to engage the mind. And he moves the spirit. And Jesus convicts the heart. So he goes into these stories now. He begins by speaking to the men. Consider, there's 100 sheep and you've got one lost. And they can say to themselves, well, I get this. I can listen. I understand what this is about. Then he moves to the women and he says, look, she's got 10 silver coins and she's lost one. And the women think, well, I know what that's like. Let me listen to see what he's got to say. And you see how in these stories, how something that was lost is meticulously sought after. Verse 4, we read about the sheep. How the shepherd leaves the 99 and goes in search of the one, and you can just almost hear his kids in the background. Dad, you got 99 more of these things. This is just one. We've got other things that we need you here for. Why go and search for this sheep? And the father says, well, I love that lamb. That's the lamb that you brought into the house. That was the run of the litter. That was the one that we fed from time to time. And I love that lamb. Of course I'm going to go search for it. It's a nice story, they think. It engages their heart now. It affects their minds. And it draws emotion. Jesus makes application. And in all of this, Jesus is moving behind the scenes. And he is moving inexorably towards Jerusalem to see that all of these things that he has been talking about are to be effective and take place. And through all of the difficulties and through all of the hardships that Jesus faces, he presses on. In the case of the coin, we see how this woman searches with exacting thoroughness. She lights a lamp. She sweeps the house. And you and I can identify with this. This is how God works. He doesn't simply just happen upon you and I. He doesn't simply just bump into us at the grocery store. He is searching diligently for you. He is looking for you in the corridors of your days. He is sweeping through the chapters of your life. He is shining a light in the dark corners of your heart with exacting thoroughness. God is looking for you. The coin is found. Let the tea party begin. Let's all rejoice. The woman, she has found it. And that story to me is just fitting. I mean, I don't know how it is that women are just able to find things. You men know what I'm talking about. If you're looking for something at home, you're not going to find it. Who are you going to call? You're going to call your wife. They just have that ability. I've been looking for something in a drawer and it's not there, and I tell Deidre that it's not there, and she comes in and pulls it right out of the drawer. It just happened the other day. I was looking for a space heater, and I said, so I'm looking for a space heater. She said, they're in the, I know you know where nothing is. She didn't say that. That's what she thought. It's in the guest bedroom, in the closet. So I go to the guest room, I look in the closet. There's no space heater here. There's just a bunch of stuff. So, I walked out, feeling like I had looked. And there's no space heater in there. And I went back to what I was doing. 3 minutes later, she comes up and hands me a space heater. I said, where did you get this? She says, I got it right where I told you it was. Now I just had to go down there and prove that was not the case. So I go down there, and now I'm looking at something, and I look at this bin, and it's full of space heaters. I'm thinking, why did we get so many space heaters? That's just the way it is, though. And this story is fitting, and we understand this, how it is that women are able to find these things. And the Pharisees now are forced to think this out. The shepherd searches for the lost coin. The woman searches for the shepherd searches for the lost sheep. The woman searches for the lost coin. Why would the good shepherd do anything less? And they grow jealous. And they don't like the fact that he is giving this group, who is less than we are, attention. And they don't like the fact that he is saying something that they can relate to. And the line grows between them. So he moves into this third story. He says, let me tell you about a man with 2 sons. It's a story about broken relationships. Now again, all of their ears are perked up. And the sinners and the publicans are thinking, this sounds good. I like this story. Let's listen and let's see where this is going to go. And the tax collectors and the publicans are over there just muttering to themselves. You see, it's a story about 2 boys that are isolated from their father. One who is close by, one who is far away. It's a story about an older son and a younger son. The younger who is isolated geographically because of his rebellion. The older son who is isolated while he is present. The audience is listening to Jesus' every word. Those whose lives are a wreck are the ones that are paying real close attention to what he's saying. Those who are religiously blind can't be talking to us. We are doing all these religious things. And the Pharisees, the fact of the matter is that their religion was based on a quantitative analysis. All the things that we are doing, intricately involved in doing stuff. Here's the second application. That you and I can be caught up doing God things. We're here for all of the services. We're out attending meetings. We're taking meticulous notes. Our Bibles are filled with notes that we put into the columns, into the sides. And we're doing all of these things, all these God things. And I will tell you that if that defines your religion, if that is the fulfillment of your obligation to God, then you will come up short-handed. And I think about 1 Corinthians 13, where he talked about love. He said, if you can do all these God things, if you can speak in tongues, and if you've got faith that'll move mountains, and if you give everything you've got away, if you're doing all these God things and you don't have love, what's it worth? Well, you say, I've got love. What are you talking about? I'm a loving person. Love is not something you say. Let me ask you, how does the love that we are required to have, how does it show itself in your life? You have to answer that question for yourself. How does it show itself? It's not simply the spoken word. It is something that is evident. It is something that can be seen. It is something that affects people. And it's something that you and I have to employ. Randy spoke about that this morning. How it is that we can be these whitewashed tombs. We're good on the outside, but on the inside, we're not what we ought to be. And that is a real danger. I agree with what he said. I think it takes an honest heart to rectify that within himself. Well, he makes a similar point back in chapter 14 and verse 26, where he says, if anyone comes to me, he's got to do these things. This cost of discipleship. These people are coming to Jesus, and he says, look, it's not good enough that you're around me. God has no grandchildren. You're not going to be you're not going to be in heaven because of proximity, because you show up here. Because you're part of the group. It's going to cost something. He is speaking to you, and he is speaking to me. Pharisees couldn't get it. We don't need a Savior. We don't need what you have to say. We are good because of what it is that we're doing. Because the fact that the credits are longer than the debits. Yeah, we've got a few things over here that are against us, but look at all the things that we've done. We're good. We are not. It's a classic story of rebellion. It is applicable yesterday. It is applicable today. Kids get to a certain age, and a lot of times they want out. And in all fairness, that is really the responsibility of the parents, to prepare their kids for the point that they're going to be on their own. It's like a rocket ship that has several stages that get it to where it needs to be. The parents are the booster stage, the very first stage that lights off, and it's our job to get our kids into orbit so that their booster can take over then and take them where it is that they need to go. And too often it's the case that we don't even light the booster, or we shut it off before they've gotten where they need to be, or we're pushing them way beyond the time that we should be pushing them. But in all fairness, that's what our job is as parents, to get our kids ready for the time that they will be on their own. This is not a normal desire for independence. This is a scandalous request on a preposterous level. He demands his inheritance prematurely, and he is asking for something that he really should not be asking for. Who does that? I've never heard of anyone getting an inheritance like this before the time. But he decides that this is what I want to do. I'm tired of this. I'm sick of the obstacles. I don't want to hear any more rules. I don't want any more instruction. I don't want any more of your religion. I want out. Give me what's mine. Really what he was saying is, I wish you were dead. Because if you were dead, I wouldn't have to be asking for this. I would have what it is that I want. I wouldn't have to be coming to you and begging for my portion. It would be mine, and I would be gone. Notice what Jesus is doing. He is using now this picture to describe the nature of men and women, to describe those that have alienated themselves from God as a result of their moral rebellion. He is talking to us. Jesus speaks to those who have sought religious independence. I want to be by myself. I want to be on my own rules. I will set the tone. I will decide what is right and what is wrong. Romans, Paul would speak to us in chapter 1 of that book, that this is true of women and men in general, where he would say in verse 21 of Romans 1, "For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and foolish, and their hearts were darkened." Well, at the end of verse 12, he divides his property between them. Verse 13 tells us of his plans. The younger son tells us that his departure is planned, and it tells us that his departure is permanent. When it says that he gathered all that he had, when you study that phrase, you will find that what he was wanting to do is turn everything that he had into cash. He wanted to sell it. He wanted out. All he wanted was the money. Like the Beatles song. They say the best things in life are true. Or they say the best things in life are free, but you can give them to the birds and the bees. I want money. And that's what this boy wanted. He wanted money. He wanted cash. And he wanted out. Because this trip that he was about to take was permanent. This wasn't like I'm running away for the day and maybe I'll come back for dinner, maybe tomorrow. No, this wasn't that. This wasn't the college kid that is leaving for school thinking that he is done with this, who keeps basically his or her room intact. This is not that. He's taking everything that he's got and he's leaving, and he's not coming back. He's gone. He's done with this. He's out. And that is indicative of us when we choose sin over God. It's interesting that all of his provisions, everything now that he has, comes from his Father. Everything that you and I have, everything that we have been given, all of our abilities come from the Father. They are his. And it is a tragic thing to see people squander their existence on themselves, because it is not yours to squander. Well, he sets off for this distant country. His wandering led to squandering. His desires had taken over everything. He thought his cash would buy him freedom. Became like a slave. He thought his cash would buy him access. Found himself in a pigsty. His cash was to buy influence, and when that waned, he found himself alone. Verse 14 would tell us when he spent everything. Verse 16 would say that no one gave him anything. He has nothing, and no one would give him anything. He was a big shot when he came to town. He had a pocket full of cash, and he wasted all that he had. And now the door of opportunity begins to open. He's in a spot. Not only does he not have any money, there is now this severe famine that grips the land, making things even more difficult. He begins to be in need. This is a new experience for him. He's not been in this position before. He had everything he needed back at home. He's had everything he needed, plus since he left home, things are changing. He needs food. He needs a bath. He needs clothes. He needs shoes. No one's returning his phone calls. No one's responding to his Facebook posts. He's not putting pictures now on Instagram because he's somewhat embarrassed where he is and the fact that no one will respond to him. He is on his own. He was the party guy. He was everyone's friend. The party is now over. And it's a moment of great tragedy. And he begins to starve. He begins to starve to death. So much so that this pig food begins to look good to him. I don't know what you feed pigs. I know some of you know what they eat, but I think they will eat anything that you won't eat. And although books like Charlotte's Web have made them into these nice little animals, and some people have them as pets, they're really filthy animals. When you leave them to themselves, I think that they are disgusting animals. And I'm not so sure that the Lord didn't make them just so he could speak about them in Scripture. They are nasty animals. And Jews are to have nothing to do with them. And he finds himself in the middle of this, considering whether or not he should eat this food. He's jealous of the fact that these pigs have all this food to eat. And they eat it with voracity. I can just picture that. You know, these pigs think nothing about what it is that they're eating. And he wishes that he had something like that he could consume, and considers even doing that to what these pigs had. You know, what if he had eaten the pig food? What if some of the people would have came by and given him maybe just enough to sustain him, just enough to get him by? You know, not everyone that finds themselves at the bottom finds the springboard out. Not everyone who has gone down this dark road is able to see the cul-de-sac at the end and make the turn back. You may be at the end of that road. I don't doubt that, statistically speaking, there are some in this audience who are at that position. And your pigsty may be disguised by your income. Your pigsty may be disguised by your house or by your position or by your family. But it's still a pigsty. Some of us live in very nice pigsties. And we have left our Father. And we are at the bottom of the barrel. The Bible makes it clear that sin does not provide ultimate satisfaction. That's not to say that there's no satisfaction. We've all heard this analogy before about Moses. Hebrews 10, verse 25, where it says, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God rather to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin for a season. Moses recognized, and the writer here recognizes, that there is pleasure in sin. There is fun to be had in sin. But it is not sustaining. It seems to be a hard lesson for a lot of us. It's the case for the drug addict who smokes dope, who smokes pot. You know, he gets high, and that only lasts for a little while, so after that wears off, he's got to smoke it again. It doesn't last. And after he smoked pot for a period of time, he's ready to try something else, and he may move on to cocaine, and that doesn't last very long, so he's got to snort more of that to get that same euphoric feeling. It doesn't last. It's the same thing for the sexually promiscuous. You know, we'll go this far. When you're a kid, holding hands is great, and that works for a little while, but when you get a little older, that's not enough. You want to do a little more. And so there's this, whatever involved, kissing or whatever, and we're only going to go this far, and that's going to be it. And then you do that for a while, and that's not enough. I want to take this further. Before you know it, you're all the way, and you are beyond the point of no return, because that's the way sin is. It does not provide us with anything that is lasting. The liar finds no end to the lies that they must tell. The proud continues to look for some way to be stroked. The pornographer who was titillated at the beginning of this now is looking at anything that he can find to find something that might satisfy that crazy desire that he's got. And nothing now is embarrassing to this person. Well, in this pigsty, he discovers that he's not just run out of food, that he has run out on his Father. Our attempts to live without God just create a void. And that for each of us looks maybe similar, maybe very different. I know just based on my own experience that money doesn't provide that, not because I've got a lot of it, just simply because I am in many circumstances close to those that do, and I see how it affects the lives of those who don't have God. It's interesting how many people like to pretend that that's not the fact, but yet when they're honest with themselves come to that conclusion. There is a French philosopher who is dead. I don't know what his name is. It really doesn't matter what his name is. But he was an atheist, and this is what he said. He said, that God does not exist, I cannot deny. That my whole being cries out for God. I cannot forget. Paul in Romans chapter 3, quoting Psalms 14, would say this. No one is righteous. No, not one. No one understands. No one seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good. Not even one. Folks, you and I are all prodigal sons. The only difference is the distance to which we have wandered. And some of us are still moving down the road away from our Father. And some of us have gotten to the end and can't get out of it. And some of us have got it and we're on our way back. Some of us have found our Father only to turn around and walk out again. This, for this boy, is a sad but glorious moment. He lost his money, verse 14. He lost his freedom, verse 15. He lost his self-respect, verse 16. And so Jesus would teach us that all the things that this boy feels, the starvation, the hunger, are only emblems of what happens to us when we turn our back on God. So I have a question for you. Have you ever been sitting in your dorm? Have you ever been sitting in your room? Have you ever been sitting in your car, maybe in your driveway or in your office at work, and begged for mercy? Now, before everyone raises their hand and say, yeah, I've done that, I want you to understand, this is not the same thing as saying, I messed up. My bad. My name is George and I'm an alcoholic. This is not that. This is different than bowing yourself before God and recognizing to Him that you have sinned and that you are not worthy to be called His son or His daughter. The problem is not that we don't recognize intellectually that we have sinned. The problem is the context from which we have come is not providing us with a lasting solution for our guilt. And so we turn back to our own solutions. More sin maybe. Better attendance if I'm just there more. I can put this out of my mind. More visitations. More involvement. More family time. Maybe I can dismiss this fact. Verses 17 through 20, the boy repeats the word Father. 3 times. He recognizes his ridiculous state. And he goes back not out of a guilty conscience, because he's going back searching for mercy from his father. Let me ask you this. What if he didn't return? Or what if he didn't have a father to return to? What if the father treated him as he deserved? After all, the boy had no one to blame but himself. No one to stand in his corner. No civil agency. No liberty union to stand there with him and explain the way that he's been living. No one to tell his father that this boy's just been the victim. How tragic would it be if that were the end? Hopeless, broken, death. What if sin were like that? What if there was no solution to this answer of sin? What comfort would there be to the sinner if he was unable to come home, to no reception, to be unhealed? How would that work? The real breakdown here is not the loss of money, not the loss of health, not the loss of friendships. The real breakdown is the severed relationship with this boy and his father. Part of the problem today is that society and modern psychologists want to find a way to explain away all of these problems that our children are having. And they do this on a merely horizontal level. The reason that this kid is the way that he is because he comes from a broken home. The reason that he's doing what he is doing is because he has no opportunity like the rest of the kids. The reason that he is like he is because he hasn't had the same support. No. The real issue is the broken relationship on the vertical plane, not the horizontal plane. And the real issue is the fact that people have lost the stabilizing influence of Jesus in their lives. I like that idea of Jesus being something that is stabilizing to us, because it makes me think of the Beech 19. Most of you don't know what a Beech 19 is. But a Beech 19 is a turboprop that was used as really the commuter plane before they started using commuter jets. And with my knowledge, and it really doesn't take somebody smart to figure this out, when you look at this airplane, you wonder how in the world, why would anybody put all of these things on this? I mean, it's got wings, but it's got fins on the side of the wings. It's got the stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer, but it's got vertical stabilizers coming off the horizontal stabilizers. It's got strakes. It's got delta fins. It's got all these things. And I got to think to myself, what in the world is all that for? Well, it's to keep it stable. It's to make this thing fly straight. And if they're missing, it loses that ability to fly in a straight line. And without God in our lives, we are just as unstable. He feels lonely. This loneliness is simply the impetus for the reality that he finds himself in. Again, not because of the lack of friends, not because of the fact that he's in a pigsty and he's Jewish, not because he's out of cash, but because of this broken relationship with his father. Have you ever had everything and felt alone? I mean, I can just see this kid walking home in the middle of the night or after a night of partying and just feeling down, just feeling sad and just feeling alone. You know, he doesn't understand why it is the case that he feels this way. You know, I've done everything I wanted to do. I did it as many times as I wanted to do it, with whoever I wanted to do it with, and I'm alone. And I just feel sad. Well, that's just the way sin is. It's a rabbit hole that spirals down. And the devil would say to us, the reason that you feel that way is because you didn't go over here. So just go over here and you'll feel better about it. And we go over there and that may work for a little while. And then the devil would say, no, the reason that you feel bad over here is because you need to go over there. And we fall into that trap. It was quite a story that Jesus is telling. The publicans and the sinners are paying close attention to every word. The Pharisees, you can just hear them thinking to themselves, this is the dumbest story. Why do we got to hear this? This is just stupid. Doesn't pertain to us. Jesus says, stay with me. Because the disaster is more than met by the discovery of the Father's love. Verse 20 says he got up and went. This is the second time he got up and went. The first time he went, and he said, give me. The second time now, he's going to go to his father. He's going to say, make me. And we sing the song, make me a servant, just like your son. Make me a servant. Do you say that? Do you think that? Are you working on that? As he travels home, now undoubtedly he's rehearsing what it is that he's going to say to his father. And he goes over it in his mind. Treat me like a hard hand, Father. I'm not worthy. I've sinned. No, that doesn't sound good. I'm not worthy. Just let me work for you. No, that's not good. Here it is. Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. You might expect when he gets home, from our standpoint, from our version of reasoning, that we might expect the I told you lecture from the Father. Well, I knew this is how this was going to go with you. Look at you. You're a mess. You wasted all the money. You stink. Your clothes are all right. You're filthy. I knew this is how this was going to happen. You know, get in the house and go around the back so that the neighbors don't see you. It's ridiculous what you've done. What we might think. Or maybe we would see the let's go slow, caveat. Look, this didn't work out so well, but before we really, kind of embrace you back into the family, let's take this slow. Let's just see how this is going to go. Jesus presents the Father's readiness to forgive. The boy could never have dreamt that it would go like this. And the verbs help us, don't they? While he was a long way off, it says his father saw him. How did he see him? He was looking for him. Why did he see him? Because he wanted to find him. And we can just picture this. The father looking for his son. He sees some dust down the road and he stops to think that maybe this is Joseph coming home, only to be disappointed. Or he takes his break, maybe at lunchtime, and rather than eating with, the people that work for him, he's over here sitting on his front porch where he can see right down the road, and he's thinking about his son who has been lost. There's a lesson here for parents, that our love for our children must not be based on terms. I'll love you like this if you'll love me like that. There's a song like that. Our love for our children must not be based on what it is they will do or will not do for us, or as we would tell them to do. Our love for our children must not be something that is earned. Well, he saw him. Secondly, he ran to him. It's a very odd thing. It was uncommon. The people in the neighborhood I just saw Joseph, or whatever his name is, running down the road. It's very uncharacteristic of him to do this. And he was running after something. I'm not sure what it was. Third verb that we see there is that he embraced him. We can think about hugs differently. There's just the bro hug. There is the side hug. There's the leaning over. This was not that. This was an all-inclusive embracing hug, where he wasn't letting go, and he kissed him. I mean, you can just see this in your mind as it unfolds. There's no question how the father feels about the son as he's now come home. I don't know if you know my dog, Georgia. When I'm gone for a while and I come home and I get down, undoubtedly she comes and she's that way. She's just, it's just tongue all the time. It's just, I'm happy to see you, happy to see you. That's the Father. He's happy to see the Son. How deep the Father's love for us. How vast beyond all measure. And we can see the seeing, running, embracing, kissing, welcoming of the Father. Well, if you're reading, you may think that I missed a word there, a phrase in verse 20 where it says he felt compassion. Well, all of these other things all these verbs are the result of the compassion that the Father feels. It is It is the tube of compassion that has been squeezed, and all of this now is coming out from it. It is the expression of the Father's true love for His Son. Well, He didn't finish the speech, if you notice, in verse 21. He didn't have to. Let me say this as we finish our remarks this morning. Nothing makes our sin so obvious. Nothing magnifies our condition. The state of our sin, our unworthiness, as when the penitent presents himself into the context of the Father's love. You come to the Father with your sins, and He embraces you with the umbrella of His forgiveness and His love. You've been very kind this morning as you listen to me. I appreciate that. And you may be in the audience this morning, and you may be this prodigal son. Use the springboard that is before you. Be courageous and make things right with your Father. Come to Him penitently, and He will grant you the mercy that you so desperately need. I hope that you'll come back tonight. We're going to finish this story. We're going to dive into it a little deeper. We're going to talk about the older son this evening, and I think that you'll find it beneficial. I hope that you'll come back and be with us tonight. If there's anything we can do for you, please come now while we stand and sing this song for your encouragement.
There's a fountain